Okay, hi, yeah, everybody. My name's Debbie Slater. I'm a local authority advisor for WRAP, the Waste and Resources Action Programme. So hopefully I'm just going to give you a kind of bigger picture view of kind of waste and its impact on climate change before the other commentators take it a little bit more local for you. So we sort of talk about the circular economy. WRAP, the organisation that I work for, their vision is to work towards a world where resources are used more sustainably, and we move towards a circular economy. So basically it's about valuing our products differently, creating a more robust economy by moving away from the kind of traditional linear economy that we have at the minute, where we sort of simply make, use and dispose of materials. Instead, it's about keeping resources in use for as long as possible, extracting the maximum value from them whilst they're in use, and then recovering and regenerating products from materials at the end of their service life. Moving towards this kind of approach has a number of benefits. It does create opportunities for growth. We can drive greater resource productivity and reduce waste because there are fewer materials input into the economy. There's less waste produced through leaner production methods. And we can also deliver a more competitive UK economy. DEFRA calculates that UK businesses could benefit by up to £23 billion a year through low or no cost improvements around kind of resource efficiency. So there are big advantages there. And then it also positions the UK in a better place to tackle emerging security, resource security or scarcity issues that we may face in the future, and obviously reduces both our environmental impact both in the UK and abroad. So that's what we're trying to work towards. In terms of waste and climate change, obviously the energy that we produce, the products that we consume and the way in which we manage the waste that we create all contributes directly to climate change. The waste management methods that we choose to use create carbon in different levels, and that obviously contributes to the warming of the planet. We know from some research that we've done during the lockdown periods that people are becoming more aware of their impact on the environment. They're more conscious of things at the moment. But food waste is a massive contributor towards climate change. And we did some research recently where 81% of citizens expressed a concern around climate change, but only 37% of people realised that the connection between that and wasting food. We've also done research where people there's a very small proportion of people think that they waste food, but we know that there's a large amount of food wasted annually throughout the country. So there's a real disconnect between people's behaviours, their thoughts and beliefs around that bigger picture, that climate change picture, and the actions that they're prepared to sort of take, or the realisation of their impact on that climate change. So there's definitely some work to do around that. But the waste hierarchy is something that's really important in terms of being able to manage that impact. It's embedded in a lot of the legislation that surrounds waste, and it's basically a list of waste management options from the most preferred option to the least preferred option in terms of its environmental impact. So the best thing that any of us can do, whether it's somebody in their own home or a large organisation, the best thing that they can do is to reduce the amount of waste that they produce in the first place. The second best option is to reuse. Then we would look at recycling, recovery and disposal. So reduction is kind of the stuff around food waste. We can all reduce the amount of food that we're wasting. Reuse, things like bags for life, refilling bottles, lots of different reuse schemes for various different materials and products. Recycle, obviously using your curbside services, and then energy recovery, that's more around, we're less reliant on landfill than we have been in the past, but there are different methods of waste disposal, such as incineration and aerobic digestion, where we can recover energy from that process as a byproduct. But then the least favourable option is landfill. And if we kind of work through the options on that diagram there, the impact on climate change kind of increases as you move to that least preferred option. So if we can tackle waste from the top of that hierarchy, then that is the best option. And at WRAP, we work kind of across the supply chain to reduce our impact on the environment by tackling the sort of impact on climate change, and by using those principles of that waste hierarchy. So if we kind of look at it from the top of the hierarchy, prevention is obviously the key element there, and we do a lot of different campaigns and initiatives, voluntary agreements that can help industry and citizens to reduce the amount of waste that they're creating in the first place. And there's obviously lots of different drivers for that. The impact on the environment is key, obviously, and that is the driver for some people. But in terms of kind of the hospitality industry and things like that, bottom line is also a driver. So the amount of waste that they can reduce helps to have an impact on their bottom line and their revenue. So there is lots of different drivers for preventing waste in the first place, but we kind of work across that supply chain to do that.
You've got a minute left, Debbie.
Okay, right. So these are just examples of some of the campaigns and the agreements that we have in place with people, and you can get more information on our website from them. This is probably the most important piece at the moment. In December 2018, the government set out their waste and resources strategy proposals, and this is still undergoing consultation, but there is a number of proposals within that to reduce our impact on the environment through managing waste in a different way. The extended producer responsibility piece is around kind of packaging producers bearing the full net cost of managing their products throughout its life. There's the deposit return schemes that increase recycling rates and reduce litter, but then there is also more locally for you guys information around working towards more consistent collection schemes, and there's proposals around separate collections of food waste. Like I said, food waste is a massive producer of a massive contributor towards climate change, so tackling that differently is definitely key. And you can again find a lot more information on our website and the government's website about those proposals. But obviously for any of the things on that waste hierarchy, behaviour change is key. And again, WRAP is sort of at the forefront of behaviour change in all the different, sort of across the different waste streams. These are our four main campaigns: Recycle Now, Love Your Clothes, Love Food, Hate Waste, and Clear on Plastics. And we produce a range of free resources and assets that local authorities can access, residents can access, so that you can run campaigns locally and benefit from those free resources and those tried and tested methods of behaviour change and that are based on robust insights. So I would encourage you as an organisation to work with your authority to kind of get these campaigns running on a local level, so that you can work towards that more circular economy that we talked about at the beginning. I'm sorry that was a very whistle-stop tour. Happy to answer any questions that you may have later, but hopefully that's given you a bit of an overview.
That's great, thank you.
My name's Julie Lewis, and I'm Head of Service for Warwick District Council and for Stratford District Council as a joint shared role. And one of the things I look after is the waste and the environment and that side of things. Ultimately, we as the two authorities are what's known as the Waste Collection Authority. So at the end of the day, somebody has to collect the waste that is produced by each household. That is government legislation. And our ideal, as you've just heard before, is that actually there wasn't any waste. And that would be absolutely fantastic, and we wouldn't have to collect it. But I think, unfortunately, we're still a good way, a good few years away from that position. So, as I say, we collect the waste. So what's happened, and I started in post last in May, was both of our contracts at Warwick and Stratford are about to end, or they end next year. Both of us have what we call outsourced waste contracts, i.e. that the waste is collected by an external waste contractor. Now, given that they end approximately August next year, 2022 now, what that gave us was an absolutely fantastic opportunity to really look at what do we want to do going forward. Because as much as what we do at the minute, is good, it's an opportunity to look at best practice and how do we really move things forward. So what we did was we actually came up with what is our kind of waste strategy, and what do we want to do going forward. Now, we also want to influence behaviour and influence change, but we recognise that, you know, that doesn't always happen by all the other schemes going on and as much as we all work. So, you know, how can we also influence those things? So in looking at our new waste strategy or our waste design, we looked at things like, well, how do we help influence behaviour? Absolutely, how do we help the climate here? And climate change is a big, you know, factor. We've got some quite hefty diesel trucks going out doing 2 miles per gallon, you know, all over the district, you know, traveling quite a lot of miles. So there's also kind of that side of things as well. Also, it's an opportunity to look at kind of like cost. Can we actually reduce cost by doing something different? And that's not just disposal at the end of it, but also the collection of it. What's best practice that's already out there? And as was touched on again earlier, what's the new government waste strategy going to do and actually say we have to do? Now, we concentrate more on, we, you know, can't actually influence, well, don't produce plastic that we can't dispose of, but what we can do is look at, right, what can we do with it in the end model? So what we've done in putting through, you know, the new service is we've actually completely redesigned the current waste collection service. So if you'd like to just put up the first slide, I think a picture paints 1,000 words here. Sorry, I was just waiting for it to come up there. Right, so what you'll see on the left is kind of what goes on at Warwick at the minute. And what you'll see on the right is what we're actually proposing for the future. So just to, you know, go through it quite simply, your current medium black bin, what we will be doing is, instead of collecting them every 2 weekly, we're going to collect every 3 weeks. Now that has 2 impacts. One, it stops all those trucks going around all those houses, 1/3 of the time less all year. So we're instantly getting, you know, those trucks off the road and cutting down our actual carbon footprint in terms of mileage. 2, we're actually reducing the amount of capacity that we're giving to people to actually dispose of rubbish that they cannot recycle or reuse. So by doing that, we're forcing the behaviour issue. We're saying to people, look at what you actually do, and we're not giving them a choice, and that's deliberate. We know for a fact that quite often up to 75% of the waste put in that normal black bin is actually recyclable. And, you know, again, it's because people don't really you know, they don't understand what they can recycle. Perhaps they don't try hard enough. Perhaps they don't care. It's very confusing. And that's one of the things in the government's waste strategy, is how do we make it all simpler? So then we've moved to, instead of the current recycling that you've got in different bags and boxes, we're actually going towards what we call commingled recycling, or putting it all in one bin. The advantage of that is you've got lots more capacity. So again, we're saying to people, we want you to recycle. If you really have to have rubbish, make it recyclable, put it in this bin, and we'll give you as many bins as you want. You haven't got to think, will it go in this box? Does it go in that box? Does it go in that bag? Can I recycle it? We're making it as simple as possible for you. And again, evidence says the simpler you make recycling, the more likely people are to actually do it. Moving down the list, we have introduced, as you've just heard, you know, the issues of food waste. We don't want there to be any food waste, but if there is, we want to collect it separately in a separate bin. And the reason for that is, I won't go into the next presentation, Andrew will explain, but we can actually, again, cut carbon footprint by having better options as where we can dispose of that end food waste product as a separate product. And finally, garden waste, we will continue to, you know, collect garden waste. We do want people to give us garden waste, but equally lots of campaigns going on there to actually encourage people to compost, because if they can compost, use it in their own back garden, it's never hitting any of our waste streams. So that's a bit of a, you know, summary as to what we're actually proposing going forward. We want to kind of really encourage the recycling issue, but also say to people, you've got to think about what you're doing with your waste. Stop producing it. Think about your food. We don't really want any waste, but if there is, put it in this bin.
Got a minute left, Julie.
Yeah, if we just move on to my second slide, the other big, really revolutionary thing we're doing is we are part of this massive new build of building a materials recycling facility in Coventry. What that means is they're going to take all of our dry recycling And that's why we can put it all in one bin, knowing state-of-the-art technology will sort it all out. They will find the best end products for all of that waste once it's been sorted. We again cut down costs. We again cut down the risk of, you know, where are we going to end up with our dry recycling? Where's it going to go? Will it end up in a Malaysian forest? No, we don't want that. We're controlling the picture. And this MRF is going in Coventry. All the districts and boroughs in Warwickshire have signed up to it. Really exciting opportunity for where our waste can actually go to going forward. So in summary, we're trying to really, you know, encourage different behaviour by actually not giving people a choice. I did this at Daventry a couple of years ago, and food waste went from 15% collection to 65%. You know, and that was simply because we introduced 3 weekly collections and people didn't want their food in their normal bins smelling for 3 weeks. So it's a bit of a kind of how we influence here and actually help behaviour while we're doing the education side as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Julie. Okay, next up is Andrew. Andrew, are you with us?
I'm there. Can you see me?
Yep.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Andrew Powell. I work for Warwickshire County Council, and we're the Waste Disposal Authority for the whole of Warwickshire. So Julie represents, well, Stratford District Council and also Warwick District Councils as 2 of the 5 waste collection authorities. And we basically manage the waste that Julie collects, apart from not the dry recycling, which she just spoke about. But we also provide the household waste recycling centres across the whole of the county as well. I think in terms of the household waste recycling centres in your locality, that would be Princes Drive and Cherry Orchard. Both of those are provided by the County Council. In terms of the main duties that we have, though, in terms of waste, one of the things we do is we dispose of your residual waste. So the residual waste collected at your curbside goes to the Coventry incinerator. And we're responsible for that contractual arrangement with Coventry and Solihull, because they have a waste disposal company. We also process the bio waste that's collected. So we've just mentioned food waste. Food waste can go into your bio waste bin and is collected every 2 weeks. And that goes off to a facility, an investable composting facility, where it's properly processed into products that can be used in agriculture. In terms of the household waste recycling centres, anyone who's visited one will know there's a multitude of different materials that we collect separately at those sites, and we're responsible for the contracts for each of those processing materials. And you know, it's our responsibility to make sure they're recycled and composted properly. Debbie spoke earlier about the circular economy, and we've got our eyes firmly fixed on that, because we expect a new national strategy to be published either later this year or early next calendar year, and we're thinking about the impact of that. We expect waste to be managed in slightly different ways, or the responsibility for the waste to be moved slightly. So we expect a deposit return scheme to be introduced, and we expect producers of waste to take more responsibility for the waste that they produce. And this will have an impact on the household waste recycling centre service, which is our shop front, so quite important to us and quite important to you as users. But we have a commitment to that service to continue to change and adapt that service to make sure it meets local people's needs. Debbie also talked about the waste management hierarchy, and right at the top of that was waste reduction or minimising waste. And we put quite a lot of effort into campaigns, behavioural change campaigns, to try and influence people to actually minimise the amount of waste that they produce. And that really is the best way for people to deal with waste, as in not to produce the waste to begin with. I mean, one of the things that we concentrate on sometimes, in fact, a lot of the time, is food waste. We survey residual waste to find out what's in it, and we know that 1/3 of the waste collected in people's residual waste bins is food waste, and that food waste can be put into people's bio waste bins right now, and in the future, under the system that Julie highlighted, that food waste will be collected separately, and we hope that that separate collection will highlight the collection of food waste and encourage more food waste to be collected. The other thing we can talk about is the goods that people buy. Most people buy their waste in supermarkets in the form of packaging, and most common forms of packaging can be recycled. So we encourage people to recycle and compost as much as they can, and we try and do this by making it as quick and easy for people to do this as we can possibly make it. But we also encourage people not to buy consumer items such as fast fashion or goods or cheap consumer goods that will go wrong and have to be disposed of quickly. We encourage people to buy things once and buy good quality. One of the things that's already been mentioned is home composting. Home composting is a really good way for people to help us by composting at home. That way they can put a lot of their food waste, a lot of their garden waste into a home composter. It stops people having to collect it, and it's a much better way of managing their waste, and also produces a compost which people can use at home. Julie mentioned 3 weekly collection of residual waste, and I wanted to mention that as well, because that will really help us minimize the amount of waste that we're sending into incineration. Incineration is with energy recovery and it's combined heat and power. So it's good quality incineration, don't get me wrong, but still we want to minimize the amount of waste we're sending to it. Burning waste is expensive and it also has quite a high carbon impact. So reducing that is really, really positive. In terms of recycling, Julie's talked about how she's going to make recycling at the curbside much easier. In terms of the household waste recycling centres, we want to make that as easy as we possibly can as well. And there's some big materials at the household waste recycling centres which you don't get at the curbside, such as wood waste and also scrap metal wastes as well. So we would continue to people to continue to use their household waste recycling centres where they need to. In terms of bio waste, Julie mentioned that in the future food waste will be collected separately. And this gives us a good opportunity to use a different technology, a new technology called anaerobic digestion. So that food waste we can send into is effectively a biogas plant that will produce gas, which can be used to either generate electricity on site, and that electricity can put on the grid, or the gas can be put on the gas grid, and then people can burn that gas in their homes. We do encourage, in terms of how people can help us, we do encourage people to make full use of the waste services they have available to them. And, as I said, we try and make this as quick and easy for people to use as we possibly can. And that will encourage more and more people to use their recycling systems. When it comes to recycling and composting, what we say is that it's a lot of people doing relatively small things that makes the impact. Of course, there's some people who will take it to extremes and recycling compost absolutely as much as they can, and that's what we encourage people to do. But really, the way to actually have an impact is by a lot of people doing small actions rather than very few people carrying out big actions.
Got a minute left, Andrew.
That's great. In terms of our campaigns work, we do have a Slim Your Bin campaign. It's available on the County Council website, and that's a short training programme about reduction and recycling, and that's really aimed at getting people to do the best job they can at their homes, and that teaches them about how they can save money. If people minimise the amount of food waste, they could save £600 a year, and also protect the environment. In terms of the carbon impact, let me just finish by saying the carbon impact of what we do as a waste disposal authority, the residual waste that we dispose of has a carbon impact on the planet of about 50,000 tonnes a year. So when we talk about, carbon impact of waste management, we're talking about that sort of magnitude. The carbon impact of the County Council, the scope 1 and 2 emissions, we call them, but the direct emissions total less than 10,000 tonnes. So waste disposal is worth about 5 times the total impact of the County Council in scope 1 and 2. So it is important.
Do you want to just really quickly explain what the difference is about scope 1 and 2?
Yeah, scope 1 and 2 emissions from an authority, and it applies to any organisation, is the direct carbon emissions from the things that we do directly ourselves. So for the County Council, it's things like our business travel, it's the fleet services that we run, it's our office buildings, it's the heating of the offices, the lighting of the offices, but it's the things that we do ourselves. And scope 2 includes all the energy that we buy in, both electricity, gas, oil. Scope 3 is the things that we contract out. So a lot of the services we contract out, and waste management will be one of those.
Okay, great, thanks. Are you done, Andrew?
Yep, all done. Thank you much.
Excellent, great, thank you very much. Okay, our final commentator tonight is Martin, and he'll introduce himself and once again have up to 7 minutes. Okay, Martin.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Very well.
Okay, I'm Martin Smith. I'm General Manager of Action 21, which is a local charity based in Leamington. It was set up over 15 years ago after the Rio de Janeiro Climate Conference, and its main aim is to divert things from going to landfill, because this is another part of the waste arrangements, because if you classify waste as being something that someone doesn't want anymore, it isn't necessarily rubbish. And Action 21 runs a large recycling warehouse in Leamington. And if I could just share a bit with you on my screen, if that's possible, I will show you the kind of thing that I'm talking about. We have, as I said, a warehouse, and all this is things that are given to us that people don't want anymore, and we try to sell them. And it looks very much like any other shop, except these things all have been used before. As you saw, there were books, there are clothes, there is a large crafting section, there's a lot of electricals, things that people might buy, give a try. I know Andrew was talking about people buying things that are more durable. We have a large selection of kids' toys. If you need glasses, why go and buy new ones? We're trying to encourage people to come and buy stuff that has been used before rather than buy new. So I just thought I would show you that. I'll stop sharing there. That is what we've got. So that's the current situation. And we are just one small charity, and we are getting far more than we can deal with. We're turning stuff away, and that is the way that all the other charities find themselves. And of course, if it gets turned away and it's perfectly good, it goes to landfill, and that's not good. So that is the current situation. And what needs to change is the consumerism, the continuous updating, the pressure to buy new items, to have the new model, rather than have something that is durable and will last a lifetime. Part of that could be helped very much if there was some actions be taken, would be if manufacturers, particularly of larger items, and an example I'd use there is furniture, sofas, settees, big items of furniture. If when someone buys a new one, they took the old one away and the manufacturer was made responsible for reusing, recycling those bits there, because you appreciate that people do want new things, but it does mean that the old thing goes straight to landfill. There's also changes that will help a lot. There is the Leamington Repair Cafe, which if something's broken but can be fixed, it's a good local initiative for people to take something along and get it fixed. We are not the only organisation that renovates bicycles. And bicycles, just because they're a bit broken and can't be ridden anymore, doesn't mean that someone can't actually put it back together, renovate it, and put it back into what is as such as new condition and is just as useful. And it's not a question of how this initiative gets paid for. It's paid for by the fact that these things are cheaper. These things are reused. It's not paying the full price for a new one. So the impact of that is that less resources are used. There's less new stuff, and currently we know that the planet's resources are being used up and are going to run out. And this is just something that everybody can do to try and do their bit not to use more than they need. So it's encouraging people to think, do they actually need a new one? Just because they've redecorated, do they need to change their furniture? Do they need to change other things around the house? Or can they buy something that is going to last them for their lifetime? So there's far more of this second-hand, already used, previously owned stuff than anybody is buying at the moment. So a behavioural change is to try and encourage more people to buy stuff that has been previously used if there's nothing wrong with it and if it does the job. And that will stop stuff going to landfill. It will divert from landfill because instead of it being thrown away, it is actually passed on to somebody else for a new lease of life, as they say. So
You have a minute left, Martin.
yeah, that's great, thank you. The message we've got is that we try to raise awareness to stop people, encourage people not to be so wasteful, encourage them to donate their unwanted items to a charity or to somewhere that can reuse them, encourage them to be reused. And just on a final note, I would like to say on our website, the Action 21 website, there is a very new and very topical blog, which is very interesting, that talks about where a charity like us and our customers and all the people that use our facility, the difference that they are making just in their own small way to try and help climate change or help prevent climate change just by keeping things going for longer. That's me done. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Martin. Much appreciated. Okay, so